But if you were to get in some kind of tournament, it goes to hell in a handbasket.
Yeah, absolutely.
I agree. And for those that are just joining us, Rob is not talking about the mortgage market right now. So
Yeah.
No, I'm
in
talking
case
about.
you came in and you heard him say hell in a handbasket, that is not what he was referencing.
I was talking about the mental game of golf, which I don't play, but is
Yeah.
that the case, Melissa? If you can be out there having a great time, and then if you turn up the heat a little bit, like get into a tournament or something, then things go wacky.
I'm actually a little bit of the opposite. Things go wacky and I get
Oh.
super in tournaments. So I don't know. I think everybody's different, but every sport is like that too. I mean, pitching is very similar to where, it's really all about your focus. And if you get off a little bit and you can't figure out what is, causing you to be off, it can, affect what you're doing. So yeah.
Do you know anything about this golfer that was arrested or not arrested or
I
detained?
do actually. Yeah, Scotty Scheffler. Apparently
Same.
apparently there was a like observer of the tournament that ended up getting hit by a shuttle bus and unfortunately was killed by and so Scotty Scheffler was trying to get to the match and ended up going around the the event and was asked to get out of his car by the police officers and was taken in as a result. But he's playing today. I already saw a video of him shooting some great shots. So
Yes, he made his tea time.
he made his tea time this morning, but he was detained for a little while.
All right.
Well, happy Friday, everybody. We're excited that you guys could all be here today. Oh, Stephen, thank you for that. Stephen says it was actually a worker that was reporting to work about 5 a.m. that was hit. So thank you for updating us all. But thanks everybody for joining us today. We've got some fun things in plan. While we get everybody in, normally it takes a couple minutes for everybody to join. So while we do that, I'm actually going to have a little bit of fun and see if I can stump Rob and Jeff. So I've got some fun MI related trivia questions that we're going to do as we get everybody in this morning. Jeff, Rob, are you ready?
Sure.
All right.
It won't be hard to stump me.
Those of you that are in the audience, please put in the chat if you've got some answers, but Rob and Jeff, you've got to try not to cheat, and watch for everybody else's answers. Okay. So what year was private mortgage insurance established?
Want me to answer that?
Yeah.
1957.
Oh, I love it. And who was the first mortgage insurance firm? You got this one.
I think I got that one. Is Mortgage Guarantee Insurance Corp?
That's right. That's right. I love it. How about when was FHA established?
1934.
1930.
No.
Go ahead, Rob. What were you going to say?
I was going to say 1938. But...
Okay. Actually, Jeff is accurate. It's 1934. How
34.
about that is not the same year that
Can we? I don't need to see the chats coming through. I don't need. I'm trying to be helpful to people. And Ira's slinging mud.
Yep, I totally agree. Shots fired, Bernard. All right, what was the home ownership rate in January of 1940? So this would be right after FHA.
In what year?
1940. And
We're supposed to know the home ownership rate of 1940?
Yeah. You should totally know this off the top of your head.
April or October, because they're different.
Oh, January.
1940.
Annualized or at the end of the month? I'm going to guess
as the Depression was winding up and World War II had not started yet for the United States. 50%.
50%.
I said 54, so I'm
54. Stephen, you cheater.
Oh,
Steven's got, it's 43% of American households owned a
Okay.
home in 1940. After private mortgage insurance was established, what do you guys think the home ownership rate was?
like right after 1957 or
Actually, right before. So we'll do right before and then right after. So right before, so 1956.
I'll go with 54% again.
54. Okay.
Oh,
Stephen,
I'll say 55.
There you go.
all right. Well, Rob was a little closer. It's
There you
actually
go.
at 60%. So it went from 43 to 60% just with that addition of FHA. Now there was a lot that happened in the market during that time too. So we should preface that. But once private mortgage insurance was established in 1957, it really took until 1973 for a lot of the states to pass legislation that would accept PMI, right?
Mhm.
So let's look after that. So let's fast forward a bit to, let's say 2005, which was the highest homeownership rate out there. What do you think that the homeownership rate was in 2005?
69.3.
Oh, you cheater.
No, I know that. Now you're getting into my era of
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
stuff.
69.3. All right.
Was that the highest ever?
Highest ever. Yeah.
Mhm. Do you
So-
remember a book James Johnson wrote, Jim Johnson, when he was Fannie Mae?
Fannie Mae.
And he had said the national home ownership rate could never go over above 75%. That was full home ownership. So that kind of drove a lot of policy back in that time. How do we get to full home ownership? And that was kind of a theme in the, I want to say the mid to late 90s into the early 2000s. If anybody remembers that. I'm trying to remember the name of the book. Somebody probably knows it and can put it in the chat.
Yeah. Let's see. Let's see.
Well, you bring up an interesting point, which is I find interesting, or at least I find interesting. I shouldn't say an interesting point when I'm the only one who finds it interesting. But I forget if it was Cuomo or somebody HUD under like Bush or something, or maybe it was Clinton, set some kind of home ownership goal.
Yep.
Some percentage. Hey,
It
we're
was
gonna
70.
hit whatever.
Yeah,
What
I
was
think it
that?
was 70, and I think it started under Bush. Again, I could be getting my years mixed
Yeah.
up. That's when they came
It's
out
like
with Section 8 home ownership and other enhancements there
Yeah.
to try to.
I view that as backwards thinking. It's kind of like a mortgage company. I remember when Countrywide said we want to hit 25% market share.
Mhm.
Things come, market share comes about from best practices. You need to set goals like that rather than some kind of numerical target. And so when you talk about home ownership, yeah, it's an easy number, but you need to do things in order to get there rather than say, we're going to get there.
Yeah.
What are we going to do? What are we going to do now? Kind of thing.
Yeah, and I think that's, I don't know if I can jump in here if there's more questions, but I do think that there's this theme right now about equitable home ownership, and it's really gained a lot of momentum. It's influencing and shaping a lot of our housing policy and a lot of the mortgage industry practices. I know we're going to talk about special purpose credit programs today. But I think it's not really a movement around increasing home ownership. It's a movement about reducing the wealth gap. And a component of that is increasing home ownership. But another component of that is not having people fall off into foreclosure, which is wealth decretion. So I think, by focusing on wealth, you're kind of taking into account increasing home ownership, but in a sustainable way, which is much more prudent than just increasing home ownership. So I think there's a hedge, which is an appropriate hedge. But again, you're only going to further widen gaps if you effectuate policies which cause foreclosure and imprudent type lending. So I think the themes are heading in the right direction. Obviously, there's a lot of tactics and other actions that need to be taken in the market and need to be aligned with that direction over time. But I just wanted to call that out because people will say, well, talk about the home ownership rate. Now, don't worry about the home ownership rate. Worry about the wealth accretion. And if wealth is growing, people are buying homes and being successful in home ownership. I think that's a real key thing.
I want to talk about that a little bit more, and I might ask you to repeat yourself because I think some of it was being overcast by some friends that Rob is making, apparently.
There, see the crowd, the party's forming.
Yep. Rob, do you have a party around you? What's happening there?
Well, there may be a guest visitor here any moment who's
Okay.
now entering the room. Melissa, what is the home ownership rate now?
The homeownership rate today is 65%. Yeah, Bernard just put it in there, 65% for Q1 for all borrowers. Yeah.
One of them just came in.
Our special guest. Hello, Kazette. And
Little
Marie.
orangutan.
We
So
have not seen Kazette in quite some time. Look at that
yeah,
smile.
she's
Oh my
smiling, got teeth.
She's got
So
teeth now too.
anyway, all right.
Big.
We're talking about serious things here.
Oh, goodness. Thank you, Marie.
Sorry,
Let's
sorry,
go ahead.
Jeff.
We should probably like kick things off so that everybody knows who everybody is here. I'll go ahead and do that real quick. Hello, everybody. Happy Friday. If we have not met yet before, my name is Melissa Langdale. I'm the president and the COO of the Mortgage Collaborative. Super excited to have all of you with us. As always, joined by Rob Chrisman, and this week's very special guest is Jeff Cooper, who is the VP of Product Development for MGIC. Jeff, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. Excited to be here. I do have to provide the corporate disclaimer. Then if I'm actually giving a presentation, I just point to the slide, but since this is a panel, I have to read. Any information that I provide during this webinar is for educational purposes only, and any opinions expressed by me are solely mine and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of MGIC. I always joke with legal that doesn't that then give me the right to say anything I want, but that's, you know, anyway.
It does kind of.
Sure.
Actually,
I have two things, Melissa. I need to interrupt briefly. Maybe not so briefly, but didn't Mark Twain have some kind of disclaimer? Like any fact found in this story is in error, or something, or wasn't meant to be there. Maybe that was Huckleberry Finn or something.
Facts. I'm trying to remember what that quote was.
Yeah. And then there's another trivia question, Jeff, that involves English last names that are modeled after trades, after jobs.
Oh, bless.
Cooper, of course, being one of them.
Yeah.
Baker, Cook, you know, there's like dozens and dozens and dozens of last names that came from the occupation of somebody hundreds and hundreds of years ago. So anyway,
happy to.
All right, Melissa.
I'm sure my ancestors made barrels at some point. Is the moral of that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
One of my sons is actually named
Sorry, Melissa.
as well. And it's funny because we named him that before we became bourbon fans, and now it just seems really weird and creepy that our son's name is Cooper.
That's funny. Yeah.
All right. So I know you started to talk a little bit about kind of the equitable homeownership, and I know that you actually established MGIC's equitable homeownership strategy. Can you talk a little bit more about what that looks like?
Yeah, happy to. It's a strategy statement, and from that, you know, we proceed with activities in 4 different areas of focus. And I'll talk about that in a minute, but the strategy statement is really focusing on engaging industry stakeholders, whether it be our customers or trade associations, or we also have a group, we call them Partners in Lending Solutions. In fact, one of them's on the call here. Hi, Bernard. And these are organizations which, you know, kind of, you know, share the goal of putting their business or their enterprise practices to work towards the mission of prudently increasing access to home ownership and sustainability of home ownership. And so with that, we have three desired outcomes. One is increasing buyers who are prepared and ready to own homes. The second would be increasing access to home ownership. And the third is really doing what we can to close the persistent home ownership and wealth gap. So when you look at that, I've got some numbers up here, and I didn't have these up, by the way, when we were talking about home ownership rates. I just pulled them up. The Black home ownership rate lags the white home ownership rate by about 28 percentage points, and the Latino home ownership rate lags the white home ownership by about 24 percentage points. Those gaps have closed a bit in recent years, but a lot of that is the white cohort is older. It has a home ownership rate of about 74%, but that's starting to come down as the white cohort ages out of home ownership. The Black and Latino cohorts are younger, and they're aging more predominantly into the home ownership years and the householding years. So we're going to see some natural progression of that. And it was interesting, Melissa, you talked about the home ownership rates where they were. If we don't, and we can touch on this more, I'll get back to the strategy in a minute, but if we don't do a better job of serving the market need for Black and brown households, we are going to run into a scenario where our home ownership rate gets into the low 60s and starts to trend closer to 60 as the white baby boomer generation, predominantly white baby boomer generation, ages out. But back to the strategy, the four areas of focus that we have are policy, research, partnerships, and product. And from a policy standpoint, we've been very involved in working within the Beltway to try to help shape public policy so that it's advantageous to home ownership and at the very least not detrimental. So we've weighed in on things like the Basel Endgame and a number of other policies. From a research perspective, we did last year complete some research with the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee data science team. That research is on our website. We actually have a case study out there, and we're looking at extending that research as we go into next year. But it's a really good dissection of the wealth creation disparities in the city of Milwaukee where we're based. So we focused on our backyard, and we're connecting the findings with that with some collective action efforts that are taking place in the city of Milwaukee. Then we have partnerships. Right now we have 27 partners. We divide our partners into three groups. We call them knowledge and insight partners, public policy partners, and partners in lending solutions. And I forgot a category, collective action partners. So some of the partners are counseling agencies in our own backyard that we support, all the way up to national organizations like NAREP and NAREB and NCSHA. I probably should spell the acronyms out. Groups like that, Urban Institute, Housing Policy Council, working with the MBA. And then, of course, the partners in lending solutions are private companies and social enterprises that produce products and services that lenders can use to enhance their own affordable housing strategies. And then the last area is product. We're currently insuring all Fannie Freddie duty to serve, equitable housing finance plan, and traditional affordable housing products. But we also are insuring, I'll say, dozens of portfolio lending programs, including various special purpose credit programs that portfolio lenders have come to us with. And we're also, evaluating new product opportunities all the time and are willing to pilot in a test and learn basis. For example, we're looking at a mortgage reserve type solution that perhaps we can test and learn. But I'll pause there, but that was a lot to throw out there on the strategy piece.
That's great. And Rob is on mute, so I'm assuming his friends are close again.
What's that?
I said you were on mute. I'm assuming you were making friends or people were coming in behind you again. I was waiting to see
No,
if that was gonna swing by in the background again.
Somebody's having lunch.
There's music. Can you imagine that music restaurant? So Jeff, if the MGIC is obviously got a great, reputation, I mean, historic reputation in the industry. And I know this is your opinion only, it's not the MGIC, I realize that.
Yeah.
But are the different MI companies, do they approach these issues differently? Or is everybody kind of in the same boat when it comes to diverse lending or first-time home, ownership, or, underserved segments of the population in terms of improving that?
Yeah. Well, from that standpoint, I think that, and we work collectively with our USMI, or I should say our MI competitors through USMI, our trade group. So we're all very aligned on policy. We're very collaborative in that way, to try to work together in ways in which we can promote affordable and sustainable home ownership. But I think each company takes a little bit of a different approach, and some are probably more focused in certain areas of products, and others may be more focused on the partnerships aspects. But I do think every company is leaning forward into the space in a very meaningful way. I'm speaking for my competitors, Rob. This is the curveball you talk about. But I do think that all the MI companies are really trying to lean forward. Some of them are doing things that we're not at this time willing to do. And I'm sure they're probably looking and saying we're doing some things that they're not willing to do. But I do think, and I'm speaking purely from a product standpoint there, but I do think that at the end of the day, we're all kind of centered on the goal of prudently expanding home ownership. And I also coined this phrase, and we use it all the time, because the rage right now is down payment assistance, right? We have lender-funded grants. We have another one of our partners, Down Payment Resource, of course, has a national database of available DPA. And one of the things that I like to say is mortgage insurance is the original DPA, right? We took the conventional down payment at a time when banks and thrifts and savings and loans were doing 20 to 25% down payments for their portfolio loans. We took them down to 10. And of course, as the GSEs came on board, I'll say, eliminating the disintermediation that was occurring in the market in the 70s from regionalized pricing, as they came on board, and then of course as the securitization market came on board beginning in the 80s, you started to see that down payment threshold go to 5 to 3. And of course, today it's 3. It can be fully gifted. You can use grants. And so there are many scenarios where a borrower is able to get into a home loan with nothing more than earnest money and some reserves. And quite frankly, when we get into those scenarios, I saw somebody asked a question about the mortgage reserve accounts. Our focus would be that we would rather find a way to get people into the home and have money in their bank account that they can call on should they find a situation, an unexpected expense, as opposed to take all their money and have them get in with nothing in reserve. So I think that's why there's so much focus on really trying to overcome the down payment and closing cost barrier, because you are, at the end of the day, putting borrowers in a better spot if they can actually have 2, 3, 4 to 6 months reserves post-close.
Yeah.
So this obviously goes far beyond the rate card, discussion with mortgage insurance representatives who are out in the field and calling on certain lenders.
Yeah.
How would pay no attention to that child behind the curtain? How do lenders find out about some of the programs that you have? Is it through the sales representatives that are out in the field?
Yeah, absolutely. Contact your account rep. I think that, we keep a kind of a scorecard of our own equitable homeownership activities. We just did a readout to our senior management team. And one of the things that I indicated I wanted to increase was the number of strategic engagements we have with customers about what is your strategy? How are you going about it? What does your product stack look like? Who are your strategic partnerships? What are the cities, the communities you're trying to target? And when we have that dialogue, I'll bring in our director of home ownership, Equitable Homeownership Strategies, Irma Yepes. And Irma spent 25 years leading a city nonprofit in Milwaukee. And so she really understands what it's like to work with underserved communities, to connect with them, to structure product solutions for them, to help a lender prepare a package that will succeed. And so she also spent several years on the housing policy side as a chief housing policy advisor to Mayor Barrett at the time. So, we're really trying to plug into lenders and say, what are the dynamics that you're working with in the markets you're trying to work in? And what pieces have you put in place? And how can we help you maybe shape that better, and make it stronger? So that's really, I think, Rob, how we're trying to work with that. In the context of that, products come up, right? Hey, we need a special purpose credit program to target these 7 census tracts, which have been traditionally historically underserved, and for which our current product stack does not reach adequately. So what can we do? That dialogue does take place in that context.
If I want to ask a little bit more about, one of the biggest barriers really to attainable housing is inventory, right? Lenders can create all the programs that they, can dream up sometimes, especially if they've got liquidity. But there's still going to be a challenge with inventory right now. Are you seeing any solutions to that may be helpful for those that are listening to know about?
I wish there was a silver bullet for this. And that is the big constraint right now, is a lack of affordable supply. So I'm going to kind of localize it in Milwaukee. Through the city's collective affordable housing plan, which was built and kind of through a collaboration of over 80 public, private, academic, philanthropic stakeholders, and including the city. And a plan was created, and part of that plan is really to focus on affordable supply. And so we're looking at it from 2 perspectives: one, new infill construction, but 2, trying to preserve existing units for home ownership and not have them fall into investor owner. So I think you're getting a lot of that in many American cities, where a fair amount of single family stock are being converted into rental, as opposed to being provisioned for home ownership. So what we've done through our partners, and the partner in Milwaukee is an organization called Axe Housing. And what they've done is created a acquisition fund, contributed to through private and other donors. And that acquisition fund is going out and acquiring properties, rehabbing them, and then working with homebuyer education and counseling nonprofits to take borrowers who are ready and put them in those units. So that's one strategy, arrest the supply of existing homes that might otherwise go to an investor landlord, and then turn them right over into ownership. The infill housing part is harder. Milwaukee being an older city, 70% of our housing stock is 70 years old or older. There are a lot of vacant lots throughout the city. Some of that the result of the great financial crisis, and those lots are available pretty cheap. Some of them for $1. So you're able to kind of work with very low land costs, but how do you put affordable housing on that? We're really intrigued by a number of different, I'll call it development models. One of them is manufactured housing, but more so the cross mod model, which is, I'll call an upper scale manufactured home, which can be retrofit to look like take on the existing character of the neighborhood. Then there are others which we've had the concrete homes, the poured concrete. That is not something that we're actively looking at in Milwaukee, but I know there's been some discussion among the groups there. Any rate, those are 2 examples. The problem is, I think, nobody is going to be able to produce enough homes quick enough to meet the demand. So we're going to have this problem for years. I think it really, unless there's a public policy solution which creates a tax credit type incentive to suddenly ramp up production, we're going to continue to go at this incrementally. What I would say to lenders who are in a community where, hey, I can't serve this market, there are borrowers with need, there's no supply. Is there collective action happening in your own backyard? Can you plug into that? Can you be part of the group that tries to address the supply solution more granularly and organically, like we're doing in Milwaukee, ground up as opposed to top down, because we're not going to be able to tell builders to just build more and more affordable. That's going to require a broader federal public policy solution, but we can kind of start working through collective action in the communities that we're in to make it happen.
Yeah. Affordability, well, building affordable solutions right now, especially for a lot of the home builders that I talk with. I mean, it's a significant challenge for a lot of reasons, not just the land costs, which luckily it sounds like Milwaukee has some dollar lots that maybe I should tell my builders about, but there's
Mine.
yeah, there's also challenges with, labor shortages, particularly skilled labor. There are still some supply chain, challenges with keeping the cost of some of the construction materials high, but the majority of it is land cost, impact fees from local municipalities, and like creating that structure through sewer and water and roads and all those sort of things that have to happen when you put in a neighborhood or a new home too. So it's when I think about like policy level solutions, it's hard to think about. I've seen some work but they're all local city programs, and they're far and few between.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think there's a lot of, and it's different in every city, in every municipality, in every state, the various barrier points that need to be addressed regarding zoning, regarding things that are driving up development costs. When I mentioned the dollar lots in Milwaukee, maybe to some context to that, a lot of that has to do with neighborhoods where you have an appraisal gap, where you could come in and still on a dollar lot, build a home and not be able to sell it for what you built it for. And we've had that phenomenon in Milwaukee for years. And we ran a pilot with the state's HFA, WIDA, pre-crisis, where we worked off of a cost-based appraisal to facilitate that, to overcome the appraisal gap. What happened is, in a span of about 3 to 4 years, the appraisals were checking in above value. Below the current, above the current remaining UPB. Let's call it that, above the remaining UPB. So values had risen, and you were no longer sitting in a value-based LTV that was excessively high. However, the great financial crisis unfortunately eviscerated that. And that's part of that speaks to all these good deeds that were done, and all these efforts that were made to advance it, suddenly being washed away, which again underscores the importance of trying to make sure everything is sustainable as you do it. Now, with the great financial crisis, nobody really foresaw that. And today we don't have the kind of freewheeling lending that we had back then. So, we don't have excessive demand from borrowers that truly aren't ready to succeed at home ownership. So I think we're in a much more positive spot. So a lot of the kind of things that we did before the crisis, we can probably do again, and endure some longer term success.
All right, we have maybe time for one very quick question, Rob, because we're right over time. Do you want to finish this out? No?
No.
All right.
No, I think Jeff did a fine job. And like I said, this goes far beyond the rate card discussion, and so many lenders will, not so many, but some number of lenders will talk to me and they'll say, oh, just these MI reps, so they're all the same and they don't make any difference. But because they're not looking at programs like this. So I think it's important for the lenders on the call to realize that the private mortgage insurance companies are so much more than just, you know, the rate on some $400,000, 90% LTV deal.
Yeah.
So I think Jeff's done a very good job of establishing that.
Well,
Yeah, appreciate that, Rob. And I think I would just say one point to that. I think obviously the buying and selling model of MI is changed over the years, especially with the advent of the pricing engines and such. But I think your MI company keep in mind that they are we're national. Now I'm speaking for all MIs again. We're national. We can take ideas from coast to coast and north to south, share and create understanding of best practices, what works elsewhere, what might work where you are. So I think there's a lot of value in that. And I think when we sit and talk with lenders, they're like, we didn't know you were seeing that there. That's really interesting. So I think it's kind of cross-pollination of ideas is a role that we do play well in the market. So thank you.
That's great. Well, Jeff, thank you so much for joining us today. This was fantastic insights. And also thanks for playing our mortgage trivia with us today too. And you hit the nail on the head with like 90% of them. So thanks for.
How big is the crew that MGIC is sending to Manhattan here in a couple of days?
Oh.
Good. I don't know that. Probably 15, maybe 15, 16. I have to look. Yeah. You'll have all our national account managers.
There you go, to wrap things up.
There we go. A little bit more cassette action. All right. Well, happy Friday, everybody. We look forward to seeing MGIC and Rob you in New York in a few days. And we'll see everybody back here again next Friday. Have a good weekend, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.